Good morning. Welcome to Money Tips, the property update. It's Sunday, the 11th of September, and I guess the whole world knows what's been happening this week in the UK. It's gone international. The news that the Queen died this week. It's been a momentous week actually. We've had a new government. We've got a new king. We've got a new Prime Minister, a new housing team, new housing minister. It's a complete change, and it happened in the same week. In fact, one of the Queen's last engagements, last official duties, was seeing out the old Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, who'd been, of course, kicked out by his own MPs and replaced by the new Prime Minister, Liz Truss. So the party can change the leader and then therefore the Prime Minister without going for a general election in public. So that's happened all in the same week. And a couple of days later, the Queen sadly passed away, aged 96. She's reigned for 70 years. I've grown up knowing only the Queen. God save the Queen, God save our gracious Queen. Now will be God save the King, God save our gracious King. Things are going to change. We're going to see new stamps issued. It doesn't mean your old stamps will be obsolete. Same with money. The little interesting snippet that the money will have King Charles's face on it, but he'll be facing a different way. I can't remember which way she faces, but it's a tradition that when the money changes over, they change the direction in which he faces. That's just a little bit of useless information you might want to use in a pub quiz or something like that. So that's the sort of thing that's been happening. But I guess the question people say, what does it mean to me? So what does this all mean to me? And especially to property investors. I have a lot of property investors tuning into my podcast on YouTube and iTunes. So a lot of people want to know, what does this mean to me? Well, in short, we don't know yet. I think you've got to remember that the Queen and the King, now the new King, is the head of state. It doesn't mean that they run the government. The government is running the show. Yes, they can influence things and they can certainly guide and influence the Prime Minister. They have weekly meetings with the Prime Minister, weekly sessions, little sit down tete-a-tete in Buckingham Palace. That's been the tradition. And King Charles, or I keep calling him Prince Charles because that's the way I've known him all my life. But Charles will be doing that. But at the end of the day, it's the government that makes the decision. The executive, that's the cabinet, the Prime Minister, and that group of people that make up the cabinet, all the ministers. They are making the decisions. They are writing the Queen's speech. But the King or the Queen can have influence on those leaders. And we know that Charles is an environmentalist. He's going to have to tone down his language now because he's gone from being Prince of Wales, where he can speak up now and again. Now he's going to have to be very quiet and not engage in politics and public opinion, just like the Queen did for 70 years. She never had any controversy. There was no scandal with her. She really did a good job for the country. So I've never been what you might call a raving royalist, but you've got to respect somebody that served the country for 70 years. She was working up to her death almost. A couple of days before, she was having meetings with Boris and then Liz. It might sound like nothing to us, but she's still got to get ready for it. She's got to greet them. She's got to talk to them. And then apparently she was still signing official papers. Every day she gets a red box with papers to sign because all of the laws, when they change the laws in this country, receive what's called the royal assent. They're not officially law until they've received the royal assent, which is basically her signature, I guess. So she was working up until she never retired from work. She carried on working and supported hundreds and hundreds of charities over the years. So we've got to pay respects for that part of her life. Whether this will change now the Commonwealth and whether countries like Australia and Canada will want to change their head of state now that the Queen has gone, we just don't know. But these are all big things that won't really affect us on the day-to-day thing. The day-to-day, we've just got to get on with our lives. I know there's a period of mourning, but you look at the way the government and the royals, King Charles as he is now, was straight into action. He didn't sit around mourning for days and days. They've taken action. Now his son William is now Prince of Wales. Catherine, I guess she's Princess of Wales. So things have moved very, very quickly, and it's all been planned, of course. These things have been planned long in advance. Even the route of the Queen's coffin, which is now moving from Balmoral, 175 miles south to Edinburgh, and they're actually filming that now. It's all been filmed live. It's a great advertisement for Scotland as a holiday destination because it looks absolutely beautiful as it is there. Even the route was planned by the Queen to go through the small towns, and so people can pay their final respects as she makes her way down to Edinburgh, and then where she will stay there and then fly on to London. But you can hear all of this on channels like the BBC and Sky. I can't really add much to that. But one thing that has happened immediately is that the Bank of England, in paying respects to the Queen, will postpone their decision to raise or to talk about interest rates, their monthly meeting, which would have taken place on the 22nd of September, which I think might clash with the proposed funeral date, which will be a bank holiday in the UK. That means employers have to pay people to stay at home, of course, but it's great news for everybody else. But the decision will be delayed. It won't stop it, but economists were expecting that interest rates would go up again, this time to 2.25%. We've seen how America has aggressively increased rates, and that's increased the value of the dollar. The UK has to act because the pound has fallen against the dollar by over 15%. And that's bad news for the country, because it means everything we buy abroad, like our oil and food and everything that we buy, is priced in dollars. The dollar is the reserve currency of the world. And that means we're paying 15% more in effect for everything. So that has to be dealt with. The pound sliding is not good news. We're almost up, near into parity with the dollar. And I remember buying dollars at nearly $2 to a pound. But all currencies are falling against the dollar. This is a massive advantage for America, of course. So interest rates are going to have to go up. And, that will not only curb inflation, but it will mean that more money will come into the pound. Basically, the pound and the interest rates fluctuate by the bond market. So it looks like investors have been selling UK bonds, which we call gilts here, and that is starting to depress the value of the pound. So the Bank of England have to act on that, and I'm sure they will. Don't forget, the economy is still in trouble. We're still in choppy waters, as they might say. We've just had, in addition to COVID and all that, we've had Brexit, right? So we've had all of that situation where we're in massive debt situation, like a wartime debt situation, where we have over 2 trillion of national debt now, the highest it's ever been. America is the same. We're also sending huge multi-billion pounds and dollars into the Ukraine. We're fighting a proxy war with Russia in the Ukraine. I think America's put in something like $70 billion of armaments and weapons, and the UK is also putting money in there, and that is having an effect on us. It's having an effect on prices, inflation over 10% now. So we are seeing problems, and Liz Truss is aware of this. One of the reasons why she got elected by the members, because she was in a final 2-horse race with Rishi Sunak and Liz Truss, and it was Conservative members that actually made the final decision on who would be their leader. It's a bit of a complicated situation, but that's the way it went. And she was favourite, I think, because she said she would do something to boost the economy, boost jobs, even if it meant borrowing. Rishi Sunak said, no, we can't leave all this debt to our children and grandchildren. But don't forget, he was Chancellor and in the government when the biggest debt we've ever had has been created. He spent 300 or 400 billion, what's 100 billion between friends, on the whole situation of the last couple of years, a lot of which, let's be honest, was wasted and spent frivolously. We saw the PPI disaster buying all this stuff, and we saw the furlough going on a bit too long, I think. That's cost the country a fortune. And then we saw these business bounce back loans going out, thrown around like confetti, many of which have gone bad. And, we're expecting that at least 20 billion will have gone into a bad debt situation will never be paid back. So you can't. It's a bit rich of him to say that, really. But what Liz Truss has said, look, it's almost like in for a penny, in for a pound. We might as well borrow a bit more to save people from this energy crisis, which has been caused by the war going on in Ukraine. And she's pledged, she didn't say quite how much, but economists are saying between around 100 billion it will cost, because it depends on the energy prices. She's immediately taken action to cap the energy bills. So most households will only pay a maximum of £2,500 per year. So that's a massive relief, because bills were due to go up in October, and it may have doubled again because the cap was going to be lifted again. So the government put a lot of money behind this. So good on her. She's put her money where her mouth is. Critics will argue that this is going to create long-term debt and she should have just taxed the energy companies. But don't forget, there has been a windfall tax already under Sunak. And if you keep taxing companies with windfall taxes, that will discourage business from coming to the UK and setting up here. That's another political argument. I don't want to get into that. But she's done something, taken action, and that will bring a big sigh of relief to the whole country, not least to landlords who pay bills on behalf of their tenants, like HMO landlords, like serviced accommodation landlords. I'm in this position myself. I'm paying bills on behalf of tenants. You can't just go and jack up the rents and say we're putting up the rents. Some of these rents are fixed and that sort of thing. So, it's not easy. And I've seen a reduction in my profits due to energy bills rising. So it's a massive relief for landlords. So that is the first big change I can see, particularly for landlords who pay bills on tenants' behalf. But it will also make a difference to landlords who may have had tenants falling into arrears because they can't afford to pay their energy bills. So there was the old story about, can you afford to heat and eat? Well, heat, eat, pay your rent. I'm sure that when it comes to heat and food, that's going to come before making sure you've paid your rent to your landlord. So although we're adding to the UK's national debt and long-term mortgage, we're just sort of putting it off really. We're putting off the repayment of that. We're kind of extending the mortgage in order to help people through what is a national crisis. And I think I have to applaud Liz Truss. You don't have to agree with whatever that she's doing and the way she's doing it, but I have to applaud Liz Truss for doing that. Now, of course, the UK is going into a downturn, and the Bank of England said we were going to recession and that inflation would reach 13%. But there is massive infrastructure projects being built in the UK right now, and more planned. And that was under the Boris government, of course, but she's going to continue with this, and she wants to boost the economy and boost jobs. So these things like the nuclear power plant in Sizewell in Suffolk, I think I said Sussex the other day, but it's Suffolk, near sort of Ipswich area, that will be a massive boost to Suffolk, which has been a bit of a depressed area in terms of, I know people who bought property in Ipswich and said it didn't rise in 10 years. So Ipswich and that part of Suffolk, that forgotten area of the country almost, will receive a massive, something like £8 billion boost to this new nuclear plant. She also plans to build smaller British-built nuclear reactors around the country. Look at the northeast. The northeast is going through a renaissance, if you like. All the shipbuilding has gone, the coal mines and the heavy industry has gone from there, but they're replacing this with new plants to build batteries for the latest electric cars. There's electric car plants up there. So the northeast is receiving a boost, and other parts of the country will receive boosting. Fracking might come back. We could see fracking coming back to the northwest. When I say come back, it never really started. It was blocked under the Boris government when he sort of went, I think he went a bit off with the fairies with this green issue. And so that's another thing will be happening. Liz Truss has also suspended the green levy on electricity and gas bills. Now, maybe that's a signal that she's not going to be so crazy on green issues and this drive for green energy that Boris was seemed to be obsessed with. So maybe that's a good thing, because we've got to become energy independent and not be dependent on countries like Russia for energy. So I think she said we'll never again be in that position, which is a great thing. So I hope that we will move away from this, and get back to producing our energy and our food, more of it in Britain. Don't forget, we've got massive oil reserves in Britain. We've got shale gas reserve, and we've still got coal. Germany and India and China are burning coal. In one plant, we import wood from another country to burn on a generator. So why not coal? I just don't get it. There are clean ways of burning coal. We only contribute 1% of the greenhouse gases in the world, and yet we're the first ones to say we're going to commit to carbon neutrality by 2050. We don't have to do this. We should think about our own economy first before worrying about. I know it's a big issue. I know some of you are going to argue with me and say, well, this is the world we're talking about. But let's first look at what India and China are doing, and before we start destroying our own economy to on this massive drive into green. I think we should have a green target, but maybe we've got to slow it down a bit and ease it in gradually. India, by the way, overtook Britain as a bigger economy than Britain now in the top 10 economies. So India has jumped ahead of us. Of course, they haven't got an energy crisis because they're buying Putin's gas and oil. They're doing deals behind the back door, sanction busting deals. I don't think America said anything about that. But India is going to be a powerful economy in the next few years. They could become the number 1 or 2 economy in the next few years. Not the next 5 years, but the next 20 years. Now that brings me on to talk about energy and reforms. The EPC. Again, we heard that properties will have to get up to a C rating on the EPC, which I think is the target is just not achievable for many of the properties in the UK, for millions of properties in the UK, the older style properties. So that might have to be scaled back. With the passing of the change of the ministerial team and the housing minister, will we see the renters reform bill pushed through or not? It's quite a way forward, but these bills can get dropped when there's a change of government. We just don't know what will happen there, but we'll have to see how these things pan out. One thing I do know is that mortgages are becoming more difficult. Mortgage brokers are telling us that lenders are becoming a little bit more fussy. They are certainly becoming a little bit more discerning with surveys and valuations. They're telling surveyors to be a bit more careful. So that's another change that's happening there. Definitely rates are going up. I was quoted on a sort of a buy-to-let situation. Rates are anywhere between 4% and 6% recently, which is a massive difference. It's double what it was before, and that's going to make a difference to the yield that a buy-to-let investor can obtain. And that's one of the reasons why they're moving north. Go north, my friend. They're moving into the northeast, the northwest to find better yields, higher yields for their money. A lot of property investors just look at the yield. What am I going to get? What's my return? They're not that interested in the property. They're not interested in what type of tenant they're. They just want it managed. Give me 7-10%. That's all I want. I want income. Now, I was at a property meeting the other day, and 2 of the speakers there made their fortunes in the northeast. One lives in the northeast, the other doesn't. He's not even from this country. He wasn't so much the northeast, he was more the northwest. But they both made it in the north, and the guy from the northeast talked about how much investment has gone into the Newcastle area with the Saudis, with buying Newcastle, but they've been investing heavily in that area for many years, and we're seeing prices rise there. So what he said is that investors traditionally invested in London and the southeast for capital growth and low yields, and then they invested for high yields and almost zero capital growth in the northeast. This has changed now because we're seeing quite large price rises in the northeast and expected price rises in the future. So have a look at our open house website. We've got quite a few properties advertised for sale in the northeast in online auctions, so you can take advantage of those. But do think about that. I'm certainly thinking about it, although I'm sort of sitting on my hands at the moment because I want to see how the economy pans out over the next month, certainly till after Christmas. That's my own opinion. It doesn't stop you carrying on investing. I wouldn't stop anybody doing what they have to do, and certainly buying their own residential homes. In my book, of course, Borrow and Grow Rich, I talk about how fortunes have been made over the last centuries by the rich and the wealthy. They've made huge fortunes, not by using their own money, but by using other people's money, OPM. I talk about this in my book, Borrow and Grow Rich. You can check that out on Amazon. So look, we're still in choppy waters. Do check out my free training, how you can transform your own finances, your own financial position, your own economy, your economy, by managing your money properly, by taking advantage of investing, not just saving, and avoiding that expensive consumer debt, buying things that go down in value at high interest rates, which eventually cripple you. So do check out my free training, and a few slots have opened up for the following week, not this coming week, but the next week, for my Wealth Accelerator Discovery Call. If you want to have a free session with me to see where you can move forward, how you can get yourself on track, and how you can transform your finances so that you can not only survive this incoming downturn and recession possibly, but you can actually thrive in it. So do check that out, and I'll speak to you again soon for my Money Tips podcast. Thanks for listening. Have a great day and week ahead, and we'll speak to you again very soon. Don't forget to like and share, of course, my content so that it can get out there to other people. Thanks very much. This is Charles Kelly, Money Tips Podcast. Thanks a lot.